Blessed greetings, each and everyone. Blessed greetings to you. Inspiring charm, blessed welcome, blessed welcomes. How are you today? How are you doing today? Well, this one here is about, bitterness, which is a really silent killer. Silent killer. Mr. Talented Reed, blessed greetings to you. How are you doing today? Blessed welcomes and thanks for coming in. This one here, I'm not gonna. I'm just gonna leave the camera off because it's not about me, and I don't want what me to take the spotlight of the message actually that I want to talk about. I want to talk about this thing called, it's labeled as a silent killer, and it's called bitterness, and a lot of people ignore it, overlook it, and it's real serious, it's real deadly, and I think it needs to be talked about, you know. I remember a while ago, a couple of years ago. Bless welcomes to that person who just came in. Bless welcome to you. Thank you for coming in. I'm just here talking about this silent killer called bitterness. And once I get to talking, as some of you probably know, I start to stutter and get in a zone. You know what I mean? So excuse me if I'm not looking at the chat and I'm not seeing some of you. But I just want to talk about this silent killer that is called bitterness. And like I said, I can remember a few years ago, long time ago, a couple years ago, back in maybe the 90s or something like that, like 93 or something like that. Matter of fact, I think exactly 93, because it's a true thing that happened. It was in the newspapers and everything. It was a hot summer afternoon. I think maybe July, like that, July something like that. And like I said, it was like in 93, 92, 93, somewhere around there. But two brothers, 15-year-old Herman Dutton and 12-year-old Dewey Dutton, crept into the living room of their mobile home in Rough Springs, Oklahoma. Their 39-year-old father, Lonnie Dutton, was taking a nap on the couch. The two sons were carrying their father's deer rifle. Herman pointed the rifle behind his father's ear, and Dewey squeezed the trigger, killing their father immediately, instantly. Instantly, they killed their father. Later that day, the boys were caught by the police, and the question, of course, on everybody's mind was why? Why would they do that? Now, some people kind of had an idea why, but lots of people were wondering, why would they do that? Why would two brothers kill their own dad? And I remember when I even first heard this story and stuff, and I immediately knew what drove them to do that. You know what I mean? Because it was like their father was known as a what you would say a abusive, a very brutally abusive father. You know what I mean? And the children lived for many years under his cruelty. Often he would even beat them and kick them, and this type of abuse it planted a seed of bitterness. It fed bitterness in these kids' hearts. You know what I mean? As children, until one day it just it just exploded. It just exploded, and the boys killed their father while he slept there on the sofa. This thing called bitterness, bro. I'm telling you, it's something that we need to first recognize, and then, you know, acknowledge that we have it. A lot of us have it, and we don't even know we have it. But today, my heart, it just grieves. It burdens for all the people who are suffering from bitterness and stuff like that. You know what I mean? Yeah, I understand what drove the boys to kill their father. I understand the deadly nature of bitterness. I understand how it destroys people. I understand how it kills silently, working in secret. I understand that people often have no idea what is brewing underneath in a bitter person's heart. And that's why I always try to put a smile on someone's face. That's why I always try to make someone feel good in anything I do, anything I say. I always try to make someone feel good. Sometimes I may turn around and I may pay for the person in front of me or behind me grocery or item that they have at the store, or I may just give a stranger a couple of dollars, or, you know, sometimes I'm going about my ways and a bum or a crackhead or whatever, someone on the street, homeless person or whatever, they hey, can I get 50 cents? I'll slip them a $5. It's not my business what they may do with it. You know what I mean? But by that little $5 and they ask for 50 cents, that could just make their day and save their life. You never know. You know what I mean? So I understand about how it can, you know, dwell in a person's heart. And I understand because plain and simple, not from what I've heard, but also from what I've experienced, because I also used to be bitter. I remember being driven, you know, by bitterness. I remember thinking often about, you know, the subjects of pent up and saved up bitterness, thinking how could I hurt someone, you know what I mean, or thinking how just people could have done certain things. I remember going over long lists of ways people had hurt me. I literally can remember going over a whole list that I wrote of people, and some of the stuff I didn't even get to write. Blessed greetings, Shane. Blessed welcome. Blessed welcome. Thanks for coming in. Thanks for coming in. And again, please excuse me if I'm not seeing you guys coming in. I'm just here on the flow. You know what I mean? My camera is off because I'm not wanting to distract anyone from what I'm actually talking about, you know? So, you know, but yeah, man, blessed love, one love, you know what I mean? But yeah, like I was saying, I remember going over a list of things of when, you know, people had hurt me and stuff like that. I would feed on those hurts in my mind, causing my bitterness to just grow and grow and grow. I remember even dealing with you know, the defiling nature of bitterness, how it destroys relationships and how it tears down instead of building up. And having lived in a bitterness and having found freedom from its grip, I have a passion for people who are being, you know, tortured or stalked by this silent killer, because this silent killer is no respecter of person. I realize that, you know, people are being stalked by the devil himself and his workers, but yeah, by himself. I have a passion to see folks delivered from this terrible, life-threatening type of cancer. You know, I was nearly destroyed by it, and now I long to just help others to find deliverance from being being in bondage from or infected with this disease, this killer. You know, I find that when I speak about bitterness, people can usually connect with it because they are dealing with it in their own hearts. Not everybody speaks about their problems. Not everybody speaks about what they're feeling. Not everybody speaks about their experiences or what may have happened to them. But sometimes you have to do that. You know, especially if you want the help, and especially if you want people to if you're surrounded by people who pray and you want prayer, even though God knows what you're asking for, sometimes you have to name that specific thing. You have to call it out. You know, I was diagnosed with Hirschsprung's disease as a young child. Under the age of a year old, I had to go under 5 open stomach surgeries. It wasn't until I was like into my 20s where I stopped having issues because of my surgery. And when I say issues, I mean like at times I would go to the bathroom on myself, number 2 on myself. In my adult years, in my 20s and stuff like that. And I had to cry out to God. And eventually, but not just cry out to him, but I had to let him know, call it what it was. And it was gone, you know? In 2018, I was diagnosed with AIDS, lung cancer, and skin cancer. Again, I had to go to God and call it out, name it out. So yes, even when we are talking to God, we need to name it out, name out that thing that we are going into warfare against. You know? And on a platform this size, you know, on a platform like this that I'm on now, or we are on, you know, I expect that some of you are dealing with bitterness in your hearts. So I invite you to just let the Lord speak to you as we look into this topic, this subject, you know. But yeah, I see bitterness, you know, threatening individuals. I see bitterness threatening families. I see bitterness threatening and destroying churches. You know, I see it as a destroyer, you know, intent on devastating people and relationships. But if we liken or even compare bitterness to a disease, we would have to compare it to the worst type of cancer or the worst, you know, deadly virus. That's what we would have to compare this thing called bitterness to, you know, because sometimes it lodges in our lives and it doesn't become fully evident until it's in its, you know, advanced state and until it's at a destructive level or destructive stages, you know. By that time, the person is in a spiritual danger. They're spiritually in a danger, you know, in a life-threatening, dangerous condition. I think of the illustration of, let's say, carbon monoxide, which is a dangerous, you know, thing, very dangerous, and mostly because of what? It's silent. Carbon monoxide is a colorless, and what like a odorless but yet poisonous gas that puts people to sleep or animals, and they never wake up. Many victims never know it's even happening. They get drowsy, drift off to sleep, and fall into a cold embrace of type of death. Bitterness is a silent killer, just like that. It's just like cancer spreading undetected inside you, or HIV spreading undetected inside of you, slowly wrapping tentacles around your kidneys and your lymph nodes or your liver or your lungs. By the time you learn what's robbing, you of strength, it's often and sadly too late. Bitterness weakens your spiritual immune system and opens the door to other issues, other hosts, just like infectious diseases. That's how bad bitterness is. All kinds of other diseases break out in a person's life where bitterness has lodged into it. You know what I mean? Let's take a look at, and if any of you are there listening, and you may do, blessed greetings and thanks for coming in. I see someone just came in. But if you do have your Bibles, and if not, it's all right. But let's look at Hebrews, what is it, 12? Hebrews 12, verse 14 through 16. And here I'm going to be reading, so if you see me kind of messing up, please bear with me. But follow peace with all men and holiness, without which no man shall see the Lord, looking diligently, lest any man fail of the grace of God, lest any root of bitterness springing up trouble you, and thereby many be defiled, lest there be any fornicators or profane person as Esau, who for one morsel of meat sold his birthright. All right. Can you imagine the bitterness there? I would like to take a special note on the phrase root of bitterness. A root of bitterness grows underground, and sometimes it will spring up and reveal itself. It will trouble you. Bitterness brings tremendous trouble into our lives. It also speaks here of many defiled, many people being defiled, Now, we know that it doesn't take very long for bitterness to spread, and it can spring up in one person and soon cause serious major problems in an entire family or church. And many people become, defiled through that. Some invasive species of plants have, have roots that are nearly impossible to eliminate. Some plants, you no matter what you do, you cannot get rid of them, no matter how much you dig at them. They grow deep underground, and they can pop up here and pop up there. You know what I mean? A few years ago, I cut some trees in a pasture. I found that later that I wasn't supposed to do that because it was too close to wetlands and stuff like that. And like I said, I mean, for some of you who don't know, I used to live in the Midwest, So the state, wetland people, they went, they wanted the spot to be monitored by scientists every year for 10 years. which I didn't know that because of the danger of invasive species and stuff like that. They're concerned, that something doesn't take root, that it incredibly hard to get rid of. So anyways, I think that when we are dealing with bitterness, bless greetings, info, bless, welcome. Thank you for coming, my friend. Thank you for coming. Again, the camera is off because, I don't want to take from the spotlight. Furthermore, I didn't set up my background, but I just kind of want people to listen and hear what I'm saying. People can type in on their opinions on what I'm saying, and I definitely will address them. But that's why the camera is off. But I oftentimes also think of like a weeping willow tree. That where the roots they are attracted to moisture. Excuse me, guys. They're attracted to moisture. The roots of a weeping willow tree, they like moisture. The roots can go a long way underground and penetrate and drain, eventually plugging up the drain and making it useless though. You might see the tree in the distance looking like, so gracious, so beautiful. But under the soil, the silent killer is creeping toward water, intent on destroying. That's the only intent, on destroying. And bitterness is far more harmful than any invasive species or any weeping willow tree could be. You know what I mean? There's a certain cold logic of bitterness. It appeals strongly to our sense of right and wrong, to our sense of fairness. Bitterness even says that we have to have like a permanent right to hate those who hurt us. Bitterness is more interested in past losses than present or future gains. But the logic of bitterness is twisted. There's actually a certain insanity in thinking that it's my right to be bitter towards those who have hurt me. Some may feel different, but when you look into it, I'm speaking truth, and I don't know. I'm just speaking. I feel like I'm speaking truth, and if you don't feel like I'm speaking truth, feel free to comment in and interrupt me as you wish, But there are warning signs. There are, like I said, I dealt with bitterness before. I used to be bitter. Sometimes I still can get a little teaspoon of bitterness in me, But I have a list of warning signs that characterizes individuals who have bitterness in them. Bitter people often don't realize that they are even bitter. They don't recognize their own problem because they're so focused on other people's problems. And that was one of my biggest downfalls. So you might be here listening and thinking, you have no bitterness in your life at all. But if you look deep, Is there any? And I'm not saying there is or there isn't, but I'm saying we need to search for it and see if there is. But at the same time, let's allow God to search our hearts to see if there is any wicked way within us, any wickedness within us, any bitterness within us, because bitterness is wicked, you know. And just in case some of you don't know, I I I do videos where I promote other YouTubers. You know, I promote your channel. I got this idea from my very good friend InfoSpot. If you're still here, Info, big up to you, big up to you. And this is a very good idea that you came up with. You started this trend. I don't know if you were originally started it, but you're the first person I saw doing it, and I was just struck with awe. I was like, wow. And I said, you know, I'm going to help you to do this. I'm going to jump on, I don't know what you want to call it, the wagon. I'm going to jump on the team and help you do this. And I hope that others see this and also do that. You know, each one elevate one. You know, and yeah, so I was doing like one or two, but I've been getting a high request for people who wants to be in it, or they're saying, how come I don't see my name, or how come this, or how come? So I said, okay, even though I know I can't accommodate everyone, I can't please everyone, I'm just gonna do maybe 3 a day instead of 2. But I also have my other content, because I don't just want to make my channel about, you know, just about that, because that's if that's what it ends up to be, then fine. But that wasn't my intent to be here on YouTube. My intent was to go live to spread health awareness due to the diagnosis that I got, and where my other videos will be to accommodate as much people as I can, because I want to give something for everybody, you know, laughter, songs, comedy, prayers, stories with morals, things like that, you know. And but yeah, so this LS is, I guess you could say, it is part of a sort of like a health awareness, because if we have bitterness inside of us, that's unhealthy. So it all works in one. It twines in one, you know. But yeah, bitter people show a lack of concern for others. You know what I mean? Individuals that are like that, they cares for very little about anybody except for himself or herself. Bitter people are very sensitive and grouchy. For example, two people are talking and they get quiet when someone else walks into the room. A bitter person will often feel that the conversation was about them. But the other two may simply have been discussing a private matter that they just didn't want anyone else to hear. So we need to be careful. But that's bitterness. You know, bitter people usually show little gratitude or none at all. Sometimes they speak words of empty flattery or harsh criticism. Bitter people hold grudges against others, often for a very, very long time. Okay, blessed greetings, and I hope you don't get in trouble at work for listening. And if you're not gonna get in trouble, then maybe you can put it on a Bluetooth speaker, and other people can hear what's going on because they might have some bitterness in them that they need to change so that you can feel better. You know what I'm saying? Info Spot says, I'm at work as well, listening to you live as well. Blessed greetings, Info, and thank you. But yeah, bitter people, they find it extremely hard to even forgive people. Bitter people commonly have a stubborn or like a sulky type of attitude. Bitter people often experience mood extremes and mood changes. They are very, very high and happy 1 minute, but the next minute they are near the bottom. And in the same breath, I want to say that it's not necessarily that someone who is like that is bitter. Just like because you may have certain signs that show you may have a certain sickness or illness or disease or STD or STI, it doesn't necessarily mean you have that. Because someone like that, who is 1 minute one way and then the next minute another way, they could simply be bipolar. Simply, they could just be bipolar, and they don't want to be bipolar. But bipolar is a very serious thing. I have a very good friend who suffers from that. So it's not that they are bitter; they are infected with something that that makes them switch like that. 1 minute they're one way, the next minute they're the other way. But that doesn't mean that they're bitter. So I just wanted to throw that in there. You know what I mean? But bitterness is sometimes called like the seed of hell, because usually it doesn't die on its own. It only keeps growing stronger. It may start out as a little seed of hurt, but soon, before you know it, it grows into a very large and dangerous thing. And that's why we need to be forgiving. Try to have a forgiving heart. And know that if we want others to forgive us for the things we've done or possibly will do in the future, we need to also forgive others. When you forgive and you truly forgive, you come out smelling better than any problem that could come across. Give me 1 second. Oh, yes, sorry about that, guys. Huh? No, not you. So yeah, we need to have that type of forgiveness. You know, the Word of God, Garden and more. Welcome, bless, welcome. Thanks for coming. Quinn's Corner TV. Thank you for coming. Thank you, and thanks for that thumbs up. You know, but we need to have that heart of forgiveness. You know what I mean? there's a parable of the unforgiven servant. You know, the parable of the unforgiven servant shows the effects of bitterness. You know, and I just want to again, you know, read that. So please bear with me. I'm not too great of a reader, but I just want to read a little something to you. This little thing about the unforgiven servant. You know, then came Peter, and this is from the Bible. That's why I'm reading it and stuff. But then came Peter to him and said, Lord, how oft shall my brother sin against me? So how he's asking, like, how often should his brothers sin against him, and you know, he forgive them? Till 7 times? Jesus says unto him, I say not unto thee until 7 times, but until 70 times 7. Therefore is the kingdom of heaven likened unto a certain king, which would take account of his servants. And when he had began to reckon, one was brought one was brought unto him, which owed him 10,000 talents. But for as much as he had not to pay, his Lord commanded him to be sold, and his wife, and his children, and all that he had, and payment to be made. The servant therefore fell down and worshipped him, saying, Lord, have patience with me, and I will pay you. I will pay you in full. Then the Lord of that servant was moved with compassion and loosed him and forgave him of, you know, his debt. But the same servant went out and found one of his fellow servants who owed him 100 pence, and he laid hands on him and took him by his, like, grabbed him by his throat, saying, pay me that thou owest. Pay me the money that you owe me. Pay me. And his fellow servant fell down at his feet and begged him, saying, have patience with me, and I will pay you all. And he would not forgive him. He would not let him go for that. But he went and cast him into prison instead, till he should pay the debt. How should he pay the debt while he's in prison? So when his fellow servants saw what was done, they were very, very sorry, and came and told unto their Lord all that was done. Then the servant's Lord, after that he had called him and said unto him, O thou wicked servant, I forgave you all that debt, because you desired me, you begged me to do so. Shouldst not you also have had compassion on your fellow servant, even as I had pity on you? And his Lord was wroth, and delivered him to the tormentors, till he should pay and all that was due unto him. So likewise shall my heavenly Father do also unto you, if you from your hearts forgive, not everyone his brother their trespasses. So I just wanted to read that little part to you. And again, please don't criticize reading. I'm not that great at reading, as you see, But can you picture that scene? Can you just picture that? It's mind-boggling. 1 talent was probably about 75 ounces of silver. So if this man owed 10,000 talents to the king, his debt was almost 250 tons of silver when you do the math. According to the figures that I come up with, that is nearly 10 tractor, yeah, yeah, 10 tractor trailer loads of silver. That was a tremendous amount of money. And the story says another person owed that same servant 100 pence. Each of these pence was only 1/8 ounce of silver. Do the math. And you'll understand that this man was owed about 12 ounces of silver compared to what he owed. Can you picture the magnitude of the difference? Can you picture, does that give you an idea? Boy, bitterness, I'm telling you. We need to find it and we need to track it down and fight it. 12 ounces of silver would easily fit in a cup. But this man owed the king 10 tractor loads, oh my God, of silver. I can't even imagine, or can you imagine being in his shoes as he went to the king, realizing how many tons of silver he owed, but knowing that he had only a few ounces to put toward it. I don't have the money to pay you now, but I'll pay you later. I promise. How often have you heard that? How often have you even said that? The king, but this king knew that the man would never be able to pay that debt. And so he said, sell the man for a slave, for all you can get. Sell his wife for the highest price you can get, and then sell his children for top dollar. Go to his place of business. He didn't even stop there. He said, go to his place of business and put it all up for auction. Sell his house, his furniture, his dogs, his cats, his fish in the fish tank, his horses, his cattle. Sell it. Sell it all. And all his household items down to the smallest piece. Sell everything now. That was the order of the king for this guy who was forgiven, went out, saw someone who owed him less than what he owed and less than what he was forgiven for. Well, that servant, he fell down at the king's feet, crying, weeping, as the magnitude of the king's demands hit him. Oh, master, have patience on me. I could just imagine. Oh, king, have patience, please. I'm sorry. Have patience with me, and I will pay you everything I owe. I can just imagine. I can picture him there on his face before the king, trembling as he pondered, trembling as he begged. His dear wife being torn from him and being sold as a slave to some rich master. Perhaps it's been 20 years since their wedding day, 20 years of growing together in a marriage, 20 years of raising a family together. Because he was a servant, but he was a businessman. He had a family and all. I can picture him thinking of his 8 children. Oh my God. I could just imagine. He had no idea how he would pay that overwhelming mountain of a debt, that overwhelming Goliath of a debt. But in desperation, he thought, I must figure out a way. I got to figure out a way to pay it. I must. There's got to be a way. I can just imagine him, you know? The king watched the scene playing out right in front of him. He saw this servant with what? Terror gripping his heart as the unthinkable unfolded before his eyes. He saw how the servant loved his wife and his children. In the recess of his heart, a soft spot was touched, and the king was moved with compassion. Moved completely with compassion, without thinking any more about the 10 truckloads that of silver that this guy owed. The king cried out, "I forgive you." Sitting there, he sees this guy pleaded, "Okay, okay." The king cries out, "I forgive you." Can you imagine it? You no longer need to pay that overwhelming mountain of a debt. It is completely and freely forgiven. The trembling man before the king could hardly even believe his ears. You know what I mean? What was he hearing? What could he be hearing? Did he hear right? Had the king just really said that you no longer owe, I no longer owe you? Yes, that's right. Joy flooded the heart as he realized that his wife of 20 years was safe. The delight filled his soul as he realized that his 8 children weren't going to be ripped from his home. He wasn't going to lose his possessions. They were all going to be safe and sound, and he was not going to prison either. You know, how would you feel if you were that servant? You know, try to picture how it was when this man went home and shared the joyful news with his family. I for one can imagine that he took a no look at his business, no longer in danger or failing, since the crushing mountain of debt was now wiped away. You know what I mean? I can imagine him, even even having a new hope for his business. He probably saw opportunity where he hadn't seen before. Since he was no longer buried underneath this tremendous debt. I can just imagine that he had a new vision for his business. A whole new plans. I picture him looking over his business, files or records with new life, new energy, new zeal or zest to put into the business. There was something to live for, But as he looked over his business records, he noticed that a certain man owed him about $240. Then this face clouded. His face got grumpy again. Why? Because bitterness was still inside of him, still rooted down inside of him. This man, he made so many promises about paying up, but he had never kept his word. All his promises were empty. He had many excuses, on why he couldn't pay and all of that. It was always somebody else's fault. As the days went by, maybe the $240 kept eating at the forgiven man. I can only imagine his growing bitterness where whenever he passed the home of that man who owed him his money, I could just imagine how he just felt. Bless greetings to that person who came on in. And thanks for coming. But maybe one day as he drove by a high class restaurant, this man who owed him $240 came strolling out. I can imagine the forgiving man pulling into the parking lot and walking up to this other man who owed him. You know, he knew that the debtor could easily pay him $240 if he could afford to eat at this type of restaurant. I can picture him grabbing the man by the throat and shaking him as he did. The other man tried hard to get away, squirming and struggling and forcing and fighting, desperately to escape the strong clutch of this man. Finally, he broke loose, fell down at his feet, and asked the man again, crying, another situation here, crying and begging him for forgiveness. Have patience with me. I will pay you. The same thing over and over. Please have mercy on me. I will pay you. But the other man was so tired of waiting. The man that had been forgiven so much, so tired of waiting for his money that, he had this man literally thrown into prison. Thrown into prison until he would pay this debt. Again, back in those, even now, that's why I don't understand how some women, they get their baby fathers or whatever sent to jail because of child support, or even the state, they just come and take them because of lack of payment of child support. Well, if you put them in jail, how are they going to pay the child support that's owed anyways? So what's the moral? What's the sense of doing that? I can't understand that. I don't know, but I guess bitterness. Maybe I can understand it. Maybe it's bitterness. But we know the rest of that story. We all know how that story went. You know how the king heard about this and became very upset with this man again, who he had forgiven 10,000. The king called him because he's the king. He can call him, so he called him back. Oh, wicked servant, I forgave you all your debt because you begged me to have mercy. Why didn't you have compassion on your fellow servant, even as I had pity on you? Why? And the king commanded that he be thrown into prison until he paid all the 10 truckloads of silver. Do you get or grasp the seriousness of this topic that's at hand? This bitterness that I'm talking about. Can you grasp what I'm saying right now? I'm sorry. I had to take a sip of my almost sound like my friend Info. I had to take a sip of Info. He drinks his Snapple. Info, you need to do a commercial for Snapple. But I'm not sipping on Snapple. I'm sipping on coconut water instead. Excuse me. But yeah, can you grasp the seriousness of this topic? You know what I mean? Often we fail to see the magnitude of our debt before God and others. It is much greater than what, 10 truckloads of silver could pay. Even if we had them. Or maybe we do see our debt, but we tend to forget. In the memory of the 10 forgiven truckloads of silver grows fainter and fainter in our minds, you know? Then when our brothers or sisters or neighbors, as much of a small debt, it begins, it owes us, it begins eating away at our respect for them. You know, we might not go and grab them by the throat and stuff like that, but it just eats up at us sometimes. You know, as time goes on, bitterness towards that brother or sister begins to fester, to grow in our hearts. You know, we brood over that small debt, and it grows larger and larger in our minds. Finally, instead of what owing us 12 ounces of silver, we feel that the person owes us 10 truckloads. You know, it doesn't even stop there, but it keeps going larger and larger in our minds until he owes us often 15 truckloads, then 20, then 25, 40, 60, 80, 90. You know? So again, that's why we need to forgive and wipe away bitterness. Some debts some things that some people may have done to us, we need to just let go. You know, some debts that some people may owe us, we need to just let it go, especially if it's been moons ago that they owe us. And when I say moons ago, I mean years ago. And we're still latching on, oh, I remember you owe me such and such. You know, we act out in our mind what we would do sometimes. And or I've acted out in my mind, you know, what I would do if I had the chance, and if no one would find out, what I would do to the person that owed me, or whatever. It's been times like that. Best welcome, NK. Best welcome. Thanks for coming. I appreciate you. Thanks for coming. Thanks for coming. I'm here talking about bitterness, this silent killer. You know, it's a silent killer. You know, but I can just imagine what I would do if I could do things to people without getting in trouble or anybody finding out because of what they've done to me or what they owe, or whatever. You know, I can imagine I would, you know, lunge out at this person and grab them by the throat and tell them what I think of them, or we may do that, you know. But yet all the while we pray and we ask God in prayers, you know, oh God, forgive us of our debts as we forgive our debtors. But yet we don't, you know. I want you to think about the person you have a hard time relating to in life, against who you have bitter feelings against. Maybe the person hurt you deeply in the past, whatever it may be. It could be verbally, it could have been physically. You know, I want you for a minute to think about that. Maybe it's been your mom or your dad who wasn't, you know, there when you needed him or when you needed her. Or maybe it was your church. or your church leaders, or a brother or a sister in the church. Just think back to a time when someone hurt you. I want you to imagine fast forwarding to when you're standing before the that great throne on Judgment Day. Are you gonna go before God and you know, and of all everything, clutching this other man by the throat? Are you gonna be begging him to forgive you, but yet you did not forgive? Hmm? If you are bitter toward anybody today, don't walk up to the throne of God carrying that bitterness in your heart. It will be as if you are maybe holding someone in a cage or clutching him by the throat. You will be condemned. You hear me? God, he wants us to repent now and find deliverance from bitterness, that silent killer. Uncontrolled anger or bitterness is a destructive, is very destructive to others, but it's much more so destructive to yourself. It's very, very destructive to others, but much, much more destructive to yourself. You know, I think of a quote that is very fitting for this. It says, of the seven deadly sins, anger is possibly the most fun. To lick your wounds, to smack your lips over grievances long past, to roll over your tongue to the prospect of bitter confrontations still to come, to savor, to the last toothsome morsel. Both the pain you are giving and the pain you are giving back. In many ways, it is like a feast fit for a king. You know, the chief drawback is that what you're wolfing down yourself. The skeleton of at the feast is you. You know, yeah, bitterness destroys ourselves first. You know, we might think we are hurting other people, and we certainly do that when, you know, we are bitter towards them, but we're actually destroying our own self. We're cannibalizing ourselves, per se. But just like any disease, just like any illness, despite of what some may say or what you have heard or know, there is a cure for it. There is a cure for everything. And if we're speaking about health-wise, body-wise, your body is designed naturally to heal itself of anything, anything at all. Fibroids, AIDS, herpes, diabetes, and the list can go on and on. But I must, before I end the list, say bitterness, because bitterness is a disease that kills. But there is a there is a cure for it, you know. Now, I wanna I wanna look at several points to help cure bitterness. First, acknowledge. Acknowledge that you have it. If somebody did hurt you, acknowledge it. Be honest with God and say, Lord, I'm hurting and I'm a bitter person. Please heal me. Be open with others and share your problem with them as well. You know, the Bible speaks of looking diligently for the root of bitterness. I believe that means, you know, we need all the help we can get to find those roots. We need all the resources, all the research so that we can find the roots of that bitterness. Bless welcome, Shannon Mark. Good day to you. Bless welcome. Thanks for coming. Thanks for coming. I don't know if you're late. I'm just I don't really put a time on here, so I'm not really sure if I'm late. You did kind of miss a little bit. Oh wow, an hour already. I just been talking and talking about this thing called bitterness. The camera is off. Moana. I can never wingo. Wengo. I'm just gonna say Wengo. Bless greetings. Thanks for coming. And to let you guys know why the camera is off is because I just wanted to you guys just to hear what I'm saying instead of look at, you know, what may be going on in the background or whatever. Furthermore, I didn't set up my background properly, so you know, I just didn't turn on the camera. And again, I just want you guys to just, you know, kind of listen to what I'm saying, but not just listen. You guys can type in what you may feel or think about what I am saying, you know. But right now I'm at the point where, or at the part where I'm talking about cures for the for this silent killer called bitterness, you know. And the next thing we need to do is forgive and release that person. Let that person know, you know, let that person know that you forgive them. Let that person basically out of the cage, out of your grips. You know, do you have somebody in your cage this evening, afternoon, night, morning, wherever you may be? Do you have someone bondaged up or caged up in your mind that, oh, they did me this or they did me that? You know, you look at him or her in this cage. You think about how the person hurt you and how it's not right, and you keep him or her locked up in that cage in your mind. Your mind is the cage, you know. But what you don't realize is that you are the one in that cage. You don't realize that you've trapped yourself in that cage. The other person is free out there going on with their lives while you are stuck there in that cage. Friends, sisters, brothers, forgive and release the person and release yourselves. You know, I'm not a pastor. I'm too honest to be a pastor, but I encourage you to come to Jesus for healing. Did you know that Jesus is the healer? He heals hurting hearts and he binds up the wounds. He binds up the brokenhearted and pours in oil and wine. Look to Jesus, y'all. Look to Jesus, the author and the finisher of our faith. Accept your circumstances as being allowed by God. Just like Job said, the Lord gave and the Lord taketh away. Blessed be the name of the Lord. Trust God to use even those hurtful circumstances for good. That's what I suggest. You know, look at me, my diagnosis. A lot of people would have probably handled it in a different way, but I'm using it to encourage others to open up their minds, to open up, to learn things. And not just about what I was diagnosed with, but about other things as well. You know, follow peace with all men and holiness. Surrender to God and give him your grudges. Give up your grudges. Stop hating, those individuals. There's no middle ground. You either hate someone or you love them. There's no in between. You either hate them or you love them. You either hate me or you love me. One thing about me, whether you hate me or you love me, people can always say, I speak. What? You guys finish it. Truth. And I'm sure what I just said, truth or honesty, is what you guys have in mind. And Shan says, I forgive me, people. I forgive me, people, but I don't associate myself with them anymore. So I believe you're saying you forgive many people, but you just don't associate yourselves with them anymore. And that can be fine too. But by doing that, would you say that there's still a little bit of root of bitterness there? I'm not saying go out your way to go see them or hang around them or stuff like that, but by just cutting yourself completely off of them, they pass you and they speak to you, you don't speak. Like, is it like that? If yes, then there's still bitterness. So you haven't fully forgiven if when you see them, you not speak to them, morning, afternoon, even though you let that go. When you let that go, you let that go. Stop hating those individuals. There's no middle ground, like I said. You either hate or you love. Stop trying to fool yourselves or ourselves, thinking we can walk in the middle somewhere. We can't. And I include myself into this because I don't want anyone to feel like I'm soling them out, because at times I falter, I fail as well. I don't want to get hurt again. I tired, bro. Well, Sean, if you don't want to get hurt again, I don't know what to tell you, because you will get hurt. Getting hurt, I think, is a part of life. So we're always gonna get hurt. Even if I tell you not to not to put your hopes and your trust into man, which you shouldn't. You should put all your hopes and your trust into God. Because God will never let you down. God might disappoint you, but God will never let you down, because he knows what's best for you, me, him, and her. So God won't let us down. you know. But at times we pray to him for things or we ask him for things, and the answer that we get was not the answer that we actually wanted. You pray for this husband, or you pray for this man to come into your life, or this woman to come into your life. You're tired of being lonely. You want to be with someone. God, please send me someone to love me, someone to love me, someone who's going to love me for me, this and that. And then when God does send the person to you, and a lot of times the person is right underneath our nose, and we don't even know it. But we overlook that person. That person could flirt with us, and we overlook it because, oh, he's just a friend, or they don't look like I want them to look, so I don't want to mess with them because no, God now gonna send that. Come give me. You know, we reject the gift that we get because it's not wrapped up in the wrapper that we like. It's not all prettied up like how we want it. But deep down inside, God knows that that person is for you, him, me, she, or her. You know? So we need to be careful. You know? Jesus, you see, Jesus is our perfect example of forgiveness. Can you picture him as he went up to the hill of Golgotha, perhaps half walking and half crawling? And I'm talking about when he was walking, you know, carrying the cross, our cross. Golgotha, when he was walking, carrying that cross, and crawling and all those things. Can you imagine a stooped figure whose every step was pain and agony? He'd been beaten to where, you know, only an inch of his life was still able to even take a breath. His back was in shreds with the type of whips they use. I'm sorry. Sharon says, I forgave them. I still call to them, but I don't go around them because them don't mean me no good. And that's fine. That is fine. That's wise, actually. You know? But yeah, can you just imagine his face was disfigured and swollen, getting kicked, beaten. His beard was torn out of from the roots, not waxed, not cut with a shaver, but torn out. And on his head was a crown of thorns. Can you imagine all that pain? Can you picture the cruel spikes? The cruel spikes and the nails that they put in his hands and feet. And they didn't just put them in there. They pounded them through his hand and his feet, like it was a piece of wood. Can you just imagine hearing the thud as the soldiers lifted the cross with Jesus on it and let it fall with that loud boom into the hole, shaking him, tearing, doing more damage? Can you see the soldiers casually just gambling and making bets on his clothes, laughing at him? The people shouting, "Take yourself down if you're truly the Christ." Huh? The mockery. Can you just imagine all of that? What if I was Jesus? That would be an unforgivable day. I know that the Bible says that he could have called thousands and 10,000s of angels to come. I think I probably would have called those angels if I was him. I think I probably would. I don't know because I'm head hot already. That's why bitterness is what I'm talking about, because I used to be very bitter, and there's still a little bit inside of me, and I'm trying to root it out. And I'm hoping by me talking about it like this actually helps me. So I'm not just speaking to you guys, I'm also speaking to myself. And again, what does that say? I'm just being honest, you know? But that must have been a very unforgiving day. A day when mankind rejected God and nailed him to a cross. That had to be the most unforgiving day. Can you hear the cries of the crowd against him? Oh man. Can you hear the words that fell from the lips of Jesus? Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. I can just imagine a shock of silence among anybody who heard him say that. I can just imagine what someone who probably was mocking him stopped and heard him say that. I can just imagine what was going through their mind. You know, a dying man may curse and scream and utter threats, but words of forgiveness are really ever heard from a man that's being beaten or abused or crucified or anything like that. You know, and Shan says sometimes it's hard to forgive someone, but we have to try so that we can feel, so that we can heal. Amen. And that's exactly what I'm getting at. That's exactly what I'm getting at. So thank you. Hip hip hooray! Hip hip hooray for Sean for saying that. Or was it Mark? Or was it the two of you? Big up yourself, Mark. Anyway, you know what I mean? But Father, forgive them is not one that you would hear many saying. Can you say that in the midst of being hurt? Well, Jesus our King, he was completely undeserving of what you know, all that hatred and mockery and spitting and on all that stuff. But when he was nailed to that cross, he said, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. He spoke these words in the midst of exhausting, excruciating pain, amid the deep emotional pain of rejection and mockery. It didn't happen, you know, it didn't happen a year later or 5 years later. Jesus, our example, showed forgiveness right in the midst of being severely hurt. Not years later or months later or anything, in the midst of being hurt. All right, blessed love, Sean. Like I said, big up Mark anywhere I'm there. Work anywhere I'm there. And safe travels back home too. Is there a curfew there, Sean? Because we have a curfew here, you know. What time is you guys' curfew? Our curfew here in Connecticut is 10 o'clock. Can you imagine? 10 o'clock. This corona thing is wild and crazy and severe and killing many people and infecting most of us, you know, or if it's not infecting most of us, is affecting all of us. But I just find it very stupid for them to do a curfew. What is a curfew going to do? For Jamaica, let's say the curfew is 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock in the evening. Well, what about the time that they were out before? Isn't there still a risk? Like, so what you're telling me from, like for instance, let me speak about here. It's 10 p.m. is when we have the curfew, right? And it's 10 from 10 at night to 5 in the morning. When, if you're not at work, you're not no business out upon the road them time anywhere. But I'm just saying, is it from 10 p.m. to 5 a.m. that the virus is out there and the rest of the time it's sleeping and it's not around? What is the point of the curfew? I don't understand. But anyways, I believe that is God's will for us today that we don't, harbor ill or bitterness, even in the middle of when we get hurt and stuff like that. Even when we suffer deep emotional wounds, we should say the same thing. Father, forgive them. I honestly believe we should do that. Stephen was a disciple, and he demonstrated this when he prayed, Lord, lay not this sin to their charge. In the Lord's Prayer, we don't say, empower us to forgive our debtors as forgiven us, but simply forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. It's as if we're saying, Lord, as you watch my life and see how I forgive people, then you forgive me accordingly. Have you ever been troubled at the thought of asking God to forgive you? Have you ever thought that, maybe you don't deserve it or anything like that? Have you ever thought, oh my goodness, blessed greetings, Kim. How are you doing? Thanks for coming in. Thank you. But yeah, have you ever been troubled at the thought of asking God to forgive you? Only as you forgive others. You know what I mean? When it's like when we pray those words, don't often tremble to think, of the ill will. It's like it just doesn't have that will toward your brother or sister, your dad or your mother or your son or your daughter or some brother or sister in the church. Do we have that forgiving heart like that? Today is the day to search our hearts. Today is that day that is the day to tremble. Tremble now rather than waiting until that day. That day, when you come before God, and He pages through your book. Can you see God? Can you imagine God looking up from the pages of that book and saying, your name is not there? Can you imagine that? I took you I took you seriously when you asked me to forgive you as as you forgive your brothers and sisters. I can just imagine God saying that. Can you imagine how terrible that would be? Yeah, God forgives in proportions to how we forgive. And by forgiving, again, that wipes out all bitterness. But sometimes we think we got it all, just like those weeds that we dig up, and we didn't get it all. So it festers back. And that's why we have to constantly stay on top of it. If we hang on to that hurt, if we nurse that bitterness, God will forgive us likewise, basically. Like the man who owed the 10 truckloads of silver. We forget the great stuff, the great magnitude, the great bunches of our death before the Lord. Then we'll go on in the church and life, and somebody owes us maybe 12 ounces of silver, and we grab them up and we have them up. Is that the kind of life, you're living? And I'm just asking. I'm not pointing fingers. I'm just speaking. Or is that the kind of life I'm living? A lot of times when I think of bitterness, I think of this man. I think of this man named oh gosh, Jim, brother Jim. I think of Jim, who he was a part of our church for a very long time. You know what I mean? He came from a really, really wealthy family, but we first met him, or I first met him in at a homeless shelter. Actually, it was in front of a homeless shelter. And he was staying there at the shelter. And Jim told me that his mother died, and then his father had remarried. His stepmother was like a terrible person. After the father died and the stepmother destroyed the will, his stepmother basically destroyed the will and took possession of all the father's, wealth and everything, so that nobody would get nothing. And of course, obviously, this made the family bitter, especially Jim. And he began to fight in court and to get, try to get his inheritance and stuff like that through the court. And he was also the manager of a hospital and had a high income. He even quit his job so that he could, fight in court for this wealth in his father's estate. I mean, this dragged out over many, many years, he said. And Jim, he basically ran out of money and ended up living in the woods or whatever. And where was it? I think he said it was Massachusetts or somewhere like that, because he said it gets cold, really cold. But I think it was Massachusetts, where it gets real cold in the winter and stuff like that. And Jim said he almost died out there in the woods and stuff like that. Like, I vividly remember talking to this man. He had a bad heart, and he also had other health issues. But then finally, someone introduced him to a local shelter, and like I said, I met him as I was over that way. But anyways, Jim began coming to church. I invited him to church and stuff like that, and he began, he started to come to church. And I remember he was very, like, a real humble type person. Okay, and for blessed greetings, thanks for coming. Thanks for coming, bro. But yeah, I remember, him being very humble, and sometimes he would say, um, what, oh God, what did he say? Gerald, at one time, I had all the answers to life, and I would wonder, like, what is he talking about? But Gerald is a person that he knew, and he um he was basically, he also, like I said, he had health problems, so mentally sometimes he would call people different. Whiteford, blessed greetings, thanks for coming, thank you, thank you, thank you, hip hip hooray for the most gorgeous YouTuber I know. Thanks for coming, Whiteford. Thank you, thank you. But yeah, I'm just sitting here talking about bitterness and how it's a silent killer, and we need to recognize it, face it, and destroy it. But I realized that this thing is very, very deep. You know, but I like I was saying, I could remember when he was saying, like he would talk to me, but thinking he's talking to someone else. But I realized that he was crazy, and he would say, like, he need other people, and he don't have all the answers. You know, um, he also told me about his bitterness in the past and stuff like that, and he found deliverance from it, and he became, a part of our church after all. So but later, some of the bitterness, you could see it started to creep back in him, and Jim started to, like, express it towards other people, in the church, and towards even the church itself. Sometimes even at me, and he basically withdrew his membership from the church, and people tried to minister to him and to reach out, in compassion to him, but he seemed to have all the answers to life again, and he had a hard shell around his heart, basically. And Jim kept on coming. After a while, he resigned from membership, but he did keep coming to church through, though. Usually, he come in probably a little late and leave right before closing. So we didn't have a lot of opportunity, or I didn't have a lot of opportunity to really relate to him that much, and he mostly also shun our efforts to talk to him, or walk away from people. You know, virtual hug. I love that virtual hug, my sister. But yeah, so I see the numbers are dropping. That's all right, because I'm still talking. I'm still talking here. But how long have we gone? Oh wow, almost 2 hours. I did not expect to be here this long talking. I talk too much. I think my friend Kim said that one time. So that's what I do best. Anyways, you know, we need to really address this thing called bitterness, because it's it's a crucial thing. You know, it's a crucial thing. But I mean, I also remember like a few years ago, Jim he had met with some ministers and said he had been, praying that God would curse them and or bring judgment to them, and they could tell that he was very bitter toward them, and this happened over and over. But Jim continued coming to church, except that he missed a few, probably meetings, Wednesday night Bible studies and stuff like that because of, his health and stuff like that. He missed a few services as well because of his health. Well, one Sunday he didn't show up, and people didn't think a lot about it. Nobody really thought anything of it. But when the next Sunday came and he still didn't show up, people started to think something might, probably have even happened to him. Some brothers or sisters, decided to even go to his house and to check on him. But before they got to the door, they knew something was wrong. They smelled the odor, a strong stench, strong odor. And they went inside and they found Jim laying down on the floor, dead. A week and a half before. I'm like, Brother Gary. Yeah. It looked as if they said it looked like he had fallen and couldn't get up or something like that. You know what I mean? And remember, he was sick. And now here was a man who had lived a bitter and bitter life and shunned the efforts of people who wanted to help him, wanted to minister to him. Now he's lying there dead. Can't say nothing, can't do anything. Listen, so I'm like, yeah. Oh gosh. But yeah, I know that sounds kind of gruesome and crazy, but that's what bitterness does in real life. Bitterness, it destroys. Bitterness is ugly. Bitterness is gruesome. Bitterness is a burden that we need to find deliverance from and curse that bitterness. Let's not end up like Jim. Figuratively or literally. Let's not end up like Jim. If you have bitterness in your heart, y'all, people, everybody, if you have any bitterness in your heart, please let me humbly invite you to share it with someone. Share it with a brother, with a sister, with someone, and find help. Bitterness, it may be a hard thing to confess, just like some sins. But finding freedom makes it so much worth everything. So let's try not to be bitter. Let's try to be bitterless. Love one another as you want them to love you. Treat others the way you want them to treat you. Forgive those that hurt you. Forgive those the way you want God to forgive you. Because at the end of the day, we don't have to answer to anybody. I don't have to answer to Kim Kim. Kim Kim don't have to answer to Whiteford. Whiteford don't have to answer to Shan or Mark. And whether we believe or not, we all will have to answer to God. And how will your house be when he gets here? Will your house be in order? We need to get our houses in order before the Lord comes. Because judgment is surely coming for you and I. We will be judged on that morning, way up in the sky. Trust me. Trust me. Get rid of bitterness. Get tested. Just like any disease or anything like that, get tested. Test yourself. Look into yourself. Get tested. And you say, why? Why get tested? Because it's better to know than not to know. It's better to know than not to know. And once you know, you've got the knowledge. So you acknowledge it, that you have the bitterness, and you fix it. As usual, everyone, Servant David said manners, love, and elevation. And I thank each and every one of you for coming in. Stay tuned for those videos that I make where I promote other YouTubers. I call them elevation time. And basically I promote other YouTubers. So look out for them. Your name just may be in them. Kim Kim, you are definitely in a few of them. Whiteford, you know you're in there. Shannon Mark, you don't know, say you're in there already. Right? I kind of include everyone as much as I can, but the more I see a person comment on the comments or come in my live streams like this, is the more I feature them in the videos. The videos are basically made for content creators, but I will add supporters in there. Kim Kim is like a supporter. She comes just for the support. And there are other people who are just like him who comes for support. So I'm gonna do a vid like I do for the content creators. I'm gonna do one for the supporters. So again, Servant David said, love, manners, and elevation. Thank you all for coming, and may the good Lord keep you and be with you. Wanna walk good, yeah?